It's that time of the year again, Nintendo's end-of-quarter investors briefings. There's so much here, the entire episode is dedicated to them. From the retirement of Kimishima, to the announcement of Dragalia Lost, to Nintendo's E3 plans. There's sure to be a lot of variety on this episode of Hello Nintendo.
Hello Nintendo!
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 33 of Hello Nintendo. I'm your host Amog, aka Cast Starman, and joining me today are Alec, aka the Scottish Lion.
Hey everybody, glad to be back on the podcast for another round.
And glad to have you, and Michael, aka Iwata Fan.
Hi everybody, how's it going?
Alright, let's go right into it with what have we been playing this week? Alec, how about you first?
The last game that I played, so I haven't been playing much at all. The last game I played was about an hour of Kirby, Superstar Allies, with my sister this weekend. We got some time to hang out between both of our busy lives. Still haven't beat the game, but we got to the final boss and then decided to hold off for this weekend. The Kirby Star Allies Game Club podcast is coming out sometime in the next month. So I'm going to hold off on a lot of my thoughts for that, but so far the game is adorable. Everything about it is classic Kirby, and if you aren't one of the people who have bought it, making it one of the fastest selling Kirby games, do so, because it's a ton of fun. Even with the price count, you will have a lot of fun playing this game.
Okay. Michael, how about you?
Well, I've been playing in kind of celebration of finishing some major projects recently. Grand Theft Auto Vice City. So I was playing Grand Theft Auto 3, which was kind of the first big open world game way back in the day, 2001, and Vice City was its immediate sequel 1 year later. So I've been having a lot of fun with that. And on the Switch, I just finished the Zelda clone I was playing last time, Blossom Tales, and I was trying out this 3D platformer that's on the Switch. It's called Whittle Tree Adventures Deluxe, and it's not the best 3D platformer out there. It's pretty kind of dry, to be honest, but it caught my attention because it has really bright and happy colors, and so I thought in order to help counterbalance a more serious shooting gangster type game like Grand Theft Auto, something super light for a contrast like Whittle Tree Adventures. So that's what I'm playing right now. Hopefully I'll be done soon and move on to something more interesting though.
Can I ask a question about Blossom Tales?
Yeah, go for it.
So if you had to rate because this is a clone of A Link to the Past, correct?
That's largely true, although I would say it borrows a lot of inspiration from the Game Boy games as well. There's some subtle differences there, but they're all 2D Zeldas.
How much does it just copy those methods, and then how much does it carry over to actually create some unique aspects in the gameplay itself that we haven't seen in those Zelda 2D titles?
I would say the majority of the gameplay is pretty much the same, and I mean even some of the models, the assets in the game, like the trees, are very, very reminiscent of Link to the Past. Now there are some gameplay elements that are unique to Blossom Tales, at least within the 2D Zelda clone setting. I think the Link to the Past and other Zelda games don't really have the most intense battles. I mean they can get somewhat serious, but in Blossom Tales, they just throw enemies at you sometimes. So there's a few scenarios in which that happens, and I would say the rest of the assets in the game are pretty unique. So it has a very unique look to it. But yeah, it's definitely a love letter to Zelda, for sure. So it didn't reinvent the wheel.
Okay. Just curious, how much does this game cost? It is an indie game, right?
Yeah, it's an indie game. I think it's $15 when I bought it. And I bought it on sale, actually, so it would have been cheaper. But normally I think it's about $15. I'm double checking to make sure. And it looks like I'm correct. So yeah, it's pretty inexpensive, and it's been on sale a few times so far, so it's something you can pick up if you're willing to wait a little bit for it.
Oh, okay. I'll keep it on my radar then.
Yeah.
Okay, so for me, I haven't really been playing too many video games per se. However, I have been playing Dungeons and Dragons as well as a few different board games. The primary one that I've been playing being Hero Realms. And for those of you who don't know about like the board game space very much, Hero Realms is a unique sort of deck building game where everybody starts out with the same starting deck, and then you purchase cards from in this middle marketplace, and then you use those cards to amp up your deck to finally beat down your opponent. It's a really fun game, and if you have the chance to play it, I highly recommend it. So, why don't we start the show, shall we?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Hello, Nintendo.
Alright, our first news topic, I guess the biggest one, it showed up yesterday. We record on Fridays. This was the Thursday news, I believe. Kimishima is retiring, and after just 3 years as president of Nintendo, Tatsumi Kimishima is stepping down, and he will be stepping down entirely on June 28th. In his place will be Shuntaro Furukawa. He has a background in marketing, specifically the Switches, actually. He plans to continue what Iwata and Kimishima did. He's currently on the Pokemon Company and Nintendo's board of directors. He is 42 years of age, and he loves Golf Story. What are your guys' thoughts on this?
Well, it's interesting because Kimishima was from the start considered an interim president, which I thought was interesting because when news was spreading about him taking over the presidency, he was widely praised for his business skills and all those various roles he had played in Nintendo throughout its history, and I thought he would be a very good fit for a little longer. So it did catch me by surprise that he actually did end up being an interim president, but it looks like the Mr. Furukawa, who's replacing him, is a good fit as well, and he comes from more the marketing side of things, but he's younger, and he's known. We know a little bit about his gaming habits, it sounds like, and I think his young age will bring a different flavor to Nintendo than Kimishima had, but also even Iwata, who I think he was in his 50s or 60s when he died. So I think that we're going to see some interesting changes perhaps under Furukawa, just a different perspective that he'll bring to running a whole company.
Yeah, for sure. And I do believe that Kimishima is currently 68 years old, so he is at that retirement age anyway.
Right.
So it really does look like Nintendo is going for the long haul here with their new president.
Yeah, no, I'd parrot a lot of what you said, Michael. This is a lot of, I kind of see Kimishima as like the grandfather who just helped the Nintendo family along during this interim. I actually forgot that he was the interim president. He did a really good job at navigating the Switch launch, and I think he should be applauded for giving Nintendo a new light. He might be a little bit forgotten in 10-15 years, but he's somebody that we should just keep in mind that he really navigated what could have been a very risky time for Nintendo. Was a very risky time. And I'm excited to see what Furukawa does with the company. This is definitely going to be his company now. We're going to see a lot of his initiatives. I have no idea what those are going to be. I'm not going to pretend to know. He seems like marketing background, so I'm expecting Nintendo to do a lot more in the marketing department as far as the range of who they're approaching. Their games are hitting a wider variation of demographics now, so I expect the marketing trends to be a little bit crazier and a little bit more diverse than we've seen in the past, which is I'm all for it. It's going to be fun.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he definitely brought a stabilizing factor during that transition period because, like you said, Iwata just happened to die at a pretty risky time, I'd say, for Nintendo, and so thankfully
it's extremely
he was
inopportune. He should have thought about it a little more before he went and passed away.
Yeah, right. No, man, it was so unfortunate the timing of things, and now that I think about it, I think that what happened with Kimishima was he was going to be just there running the show for a few months, and that so his actual title was interim president during that time, but then he transitioned to real president and CEO of Nintendo for I guess it still ended up being interim enough, 3 years, especially relative to Nintendo's CEO history. Most of them stay for 20 years. One of them was even a CEO for what was it, 50, 60 years. So it was
Oh
a
yeah.
very long time. So his tenure was remarkably short, but yeah, his stabilizing factor was needed, and I think it really facilitated the Switch's success for sure.
Oh yeah, and Alec, going back to something you said earlier about seeing Furukawa's vision, Kimishima mostly just held on to Iwata's vision, and just kept moving along at that sort of same pace. I'm moving my hand right now. You guys listening won't be able to see that, but my fellow podcasters can. But really, it will be interesting because we might be seeing a drastic turn of events coming up soon. Now that we are almost officially out of Iwata's vision, because the Switch, I believe, was in development, in heavy development, before Iwata had passed away.
Yes, yeah.
So I don't know how much of that changed after he passed away. I severely doubt that much did, because it does seem like the Switch was a sort of natural successor to sort of the Wii U and Wii, when you really dig deep into it, along with looking at like the current climate of the gaming market and where Nintendo wanted to go with things.
Yeah, by that time, I mean, even for instance, Breath of the Wild had been rumored to be kind of done in a way, even as early as late 2015 at least. And like from there, they just did refinements and optimizations for the Switch, since I guess that even at that point, they might not have known what they were going to do. So I imagine Iwata, really his vision can be seen in a lot of the stuff we're enjoying even now. But yeah, I think right about now we're going to start seeing major projects from Nintendo that might have just gotten started while Iwata was alive. So we're going to start getting a different flavor perhaps because of that.
Oh yeah, most definitely, especially because Iwata really liked to have his hand on the creative process for Nintendo games and other Nintendo media as well. So now without that sort of guiding hand, especially now that we're at the end of the cycle or at the start of the new cycle of games where Iwata wasn't involved, it'll definitely be interesting.
For sure.
Hello, Nintendo!
And now on to our second news topic, Dragalia Lost coming to mobile. So a little flip on what people thought Nintendo would be doing after Iwata had passed away. Nintendo decided to go full on into mobile gaming, and this will actually be Dragalia Lost is a new IP in partnership with Cygames coming to mobile. And Cygames is known for making gacha mobile games along the same lines as Fire Emblem Heroes. They're saying that this is going to be an action RPG. Cygames is also the developer, or were the developers of Grand Blue Fantasy, Shadowverse, etc. And Nintendo is even purchasing 5% of Cygames shares. What do you guys feel about a brand new IP coming directly to mobile rather than going through one of Nintendo's tried and true consoles first?
This feels like, well, I guess the question is, for me, because I'm trying to, personally, I don't really care a whole lot about this, but from a point of view of looking at what Nintendo is doing, is this what they want to do, or is this what they are doing because it's the way that the market is trending? I feel like this announcement was a little bit, not underwhelming, but it was just presented as is, like, okay, here's what we're doing because it is part of the market now, and we kind of have to do this. So this is more of a business venture than a core philosophy idea. Going from that, yeah, I don't think it affects what we're going to see on main consoles a whole lot. This is definitely partnering with a company that is specifically for mobile gaming, so I don't think it's taking away from what we typically see, more so than, like I said, they're just doing it to be part of a new market trend.
Oh yeah, it almost seems to me that Nintendo is just trying to diversify some, and this could be good, could be bad in my opinion. I think it's too early to tell.
Yes.
Michael, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, one thing I was reading up on this before, I forget which writer it was. It might have been through NintendoLife.com or something like that. But one journalist had pointed out that this was what Nintendo did instead of adapting The Legend of Zelda or Xenoblade to a mobile platform. And so when I read that, I actually was kind of relieved, because I really feel like it's hard to put Xenoblade or Zelda on a mobile device without kind of cheapening the experience too much. I feel like in comparison, something like Mario and Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, or even kind of a mini Fire Emblem in the form of Fire Emblem Heroes, somehow that didn't seem to be any sort of compromise whatsoever. But I can't think of what you could have done with Zelda or Xenoblade that wouldn't have been some sort of really, really kind of underwhelming side game that didn't even feel like a real part of the rest of the universe. And so I'm very relieved that they did this instead, because it's still a pretty serious game. It's a mobile RPG. It sounds like it's going to be pretty rich in content and story, but it's a new IP. They can take more risks with it. They have a lot more freedoms with it to adapt to the mobile platform that they're dealing with. And the thing with Nintendo games in particular is they're always tied to Nintendo hardware. And so when the games are really large brand titles like Zelda titles or Xenoblade, they really do get shaped by Nintendo hardware in particular. So yeah, I mean, I think a mobile platform, it's different. This is probably not a game that I'll get too into. I'm not generally a fan of microtransactions either, but I do understand from a business point of view, kind of like what Alec was saying, that why Nintendo would do this. So yeah, it makes perfect sense for Nintendo to be continuing to diversify their options and to enter into the mobile sphere more seriously and acquire stakes in various companies. So it makes sense. It's not a product I think will be a big deal to Nintendo fans, but it's there and I'm okay with it.
Yeah, and it definitely doesn't seem like it's out of nowhere either. This is, I think, another one of the sort of natural steps that Nintendo would have made at some point.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm definitely glad they never adapted Zelda or Xenoblade or one of their other big IPs to the phone game.
Yeah, I just can't imagine. I mean, with Zelda, what would it have been? Like a target practice minigame or something like that? I don't know. I mean, that wouldn't have been bad. I just it would have been not the best either. So I'm relieved.
Link's crossbow training 2.0.
Right, exactly.
Ooh, tag a mobile onto that title at the end, and I don't know. I'm imagining that game right now, like a Link's crossbow training, and it could be like a cool sort of vertical Angry Birds-esque slingshot sort of game.
Yeah, Nintendo could make an Angry Birds clone. That would be awesome, actually.
They could do something like that with Tingle's Rupee Mobile Land.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Honestly, that's a game I could see coming to mobile if they wanted to integrate that with some sort of Legend of Zelda game on the Switch or maybe on the 3DS. It doesn't seem out of the realms of possibilities, especially considering that is something that happened sort of in like the GBA GameCube era, where there were tiny GBA games to go along with bigger GameCube games. I remember, not Nintendo specifically, but Sonic Adventure 2 had a link-up capability with a Game Boy Advanced game. I don't remember exactly what it was called, but it enhanced the Chow Garden in the game.
No, I remember that. I don't remember the title either, but Animal Crossing also did that with the island. If you wanted to visit the island on the GameCube, Animal Crossing, you needed the Game Boy Advance. And also Four Swords Adventures, which is a Zelda title, obviously used the Game Boy Advance as a controller. So it's possible, and I think if they did something that collaborated with one of their larger games, that would be a different flair on it that might make it more interesting. Like that's sort of what, for instance, Bethesda did with Fallout. They made a mobile application of some form that interacts with Fallout 4, and I mean it's not meant to be its own entity because Fallout 4 is this big grand thing. But it's meant to just kind of complement the experience, and I think they did something similar with Grand Theft Auto as well. So yeah, I could see Nintendo doing something like that. But in terms of creating a truly interesting standalone experience, I'm more skeptical. I still don't think it's impossible. I'm just lacking the imagination to see it work out.
Yeah, but what you don't need any imagination for is our next news topic, which is all about sales data.
Hello, Nintendo!
This is, I guess, a kind of abrupt cut from the last news topic. But, so Super Mario Odyssey is the best-selling Nintendo Switch game currently, with 10.41 million units sold worldwide, I believe. And coming in second is Mario Kart 8 Deluxe with 9.22 million units worldwide. Interesting is that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has indeed outsold the original Mario Kart 8. And then The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild with 8.48 million units, Splatoon 2 6.02 million, ARMS 1.85 million, and then it gets a little out of order. But then another game to note is Kirby Star Allies at 1.26 million, which, Alec, you were talking about Kirby Star Allies earlier. That 1.26 million units is, I think, a phenomenal number for a Kirby game today.
Yeah, that's a huge number especially because it launched just a month ago. And Kirby's typically seen as a very not exclusive so much, but it's seen as a very niche audience. Not everybody is gonna buy into Kirby because it's not a super challenging game. It's not Dark Souls. But I think what appealed to a lot of people is there is definitely this and I think it's a good strategy from a business point of view that Nintendo separated their launches out so that this was a big launch in between a window of no launch for Nintendo Switch games. But I think it also, the kind of the cuter art style, the lightheartedness appealed to more people who are just getting into video games, who don't necessarily want the Dark Souls experience, and I'm using Dark Souls very generically just for that hardcore experience, if you will. People know that Kirby is a mainstay of the Nintendo franchise. I would consider it probably the five powerhouses of Nintendo, whatever you want to call their characters. But Kirby's definitely up there, so people who are just buying the Switch for the first time want to experience, what is a Kirby game like? What is this fun little shortcake loving character? And so that appeal, I think, extends to a lot of people. The simple gameplay, I think, extends to a lot of children as well, whereas parents are going to look at this and they're going to feel fine buying this game for their kids. They're not going to question. I mean, he's actually smiling on the cover, which is another point that Kirby's finally happy again in America. But yeah, I think that the whole presentation of Kirby is the way that they marketed this game is just phenomenal. And I think it's a huge sign for Nintendo that people want to experience what their main franchises are.
Oh yeah. Nintendo has made a great decision trying to get out a lot of their main franchise games relatively early on in the Switch lifecycle, not leaving people waiting so long, like with the Wii U, for example. The Wii U had a few like big games early on, and everyone talks about this. We've talked about this on the podcast in earlier episodes, but I think Kirby Star Allies also benefits from the fact that it came out at, I think, one of the perfect times for it to come out. It came out not too long after previous big Nintendo games, but still long enough where a bunch of people would be done with their old games and are now just looking for a new game, a new experience to play. And Kirby Star Allies is probably, for most people, an extremely new experience that they would not have had otherwise.
Yeah, no, I agree. Kirby kind of brings a diversification factor to the Switch because we kind of started off with the big grand adventures. We got Mario and Zelda. Zelda was on day one. Mario was just a few months later. No, not a few months, but 5 or 6 months in, and 7. And in the meantime, we still had Splatoon, Mario Kart, and ARMS, all these amazing multiplayer experiences. And so Nintendo really hit the ground running. So now it seems like we're in the era where we're getting some smaller titles, maybe relative to the others, like Kirby, but they're interesting, lighter experiences that I think will appeal to a lot of people. The other thing is Kirby just appeals to a completely different demographic, perhaps, as well. So maybe this is part of a marketing strategy. Wait long enough that a lot of kids will have gotten their Nintendo Switch by now. At least let one Christmas season pass, and so that's when Kirby shows up on the scene. And so yeah, I think Kirby's gonna, in a year's time, have maybe 3+ million sales or something like that. It's still just brand new. But yeah, it's very interesting. The list, as we look at it, they're all just such wonderful titles. And no, I mean, one thing that surprises me is I actually thought Mario Kart 8 Deluxe would outsell everything else. Because I think, I could be completely wrong on this, but I think Mario Kart games have generally outsold anything else Nintendo produces for the longest time. That might not be true.
So.
Yeah, and so this is the first time where something like Mario Odyssey actually managed to capture a large portion of Switch owners, with 17.8 million Switches being sold, 10.5 and about 10.4 million Odyssey copies being sold. We certainly see something like 60% plus of Switch owners playing Odyssey, so that's pretty cool, I think.
Oh yeah, for sure. With a 60% attachment rate. I remember Breath of the Wild had, apparently an over 100% attachment rate at the very start of the system's life.
Yeah, that would make sense, because there 3 games right at the start, and then a few weeks later we started getting into a few dozen or something like that. But yeah, I do remember that being the case, that Breath of the Wild just had sold more than there were Switches, because there was scarcity for the hardware for the longest time. It was pretty hard to get a Switch the day you wanted one. You had to kind of hunt around the internet and hope for the best, up until at least August of last year. So.
Oh yeah, I think at this point now we are well past Switches being out of stock.
Yeah, thankfully.
If you want one, you can go and get one real quick. It's no big deal.
Yep, absolutely.
And to throw the Nintendo 3DS a little bone here, so the Nintendo 3DS, I think this is the whole family of 3DS systems. There's been a total of 72.53 million units sold. And in terms of software, just about 365 million units, which does make sense in my mind based on like, I don't know, everyone doing some quick math would have what, like 4 to 5 games at the least over the lifetime of their system.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
I know some of you guys who can buzz through games a lot quicker will disagree and probably have a lot more or probably get through 4 to 5 games a year at least. And I don't know, the 3DS has been out for 7 years now, so that's a lot of games.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know for me, I think I'm even at over 100 games on the 3DS because so many of them are just little eShop games, for instance, or little indie titles like Mutant Mud. So if you own it throughout its entire lifespan, it's pretty easy to end up building a pretty substantial collection.
Oh yeah, and especially with the 2 Humble Bundles that
Right.
Nintendo was a part of, you probably got like 20 3DS games at least from just those 2 Humble Bundles.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, for instance, how I built 1/5 or so of my collection. And so, yeah, if you just took advantage of sales and humble bundles and things like that, it's pretty easy to build a big collection. I hope we'll see some Switch humble bundles as well. That would be really cool.
Oh yeah, I don't expect to see that for a few years though.
True.
Yeah, no, I love the 3DS. If you haven't picked one up yet, you can get one for really inexpensive. There's some, I actually don't own that many 3DS titles, but I just love being able to, there's some really great experiences for everybody. Ocarina of Time 3DS is my favorite game. You have Animal Crossing New Leaf, which will sink hours of your life away. You have Monster Hunter Generations, which I know not everybody likes playing it on a smaller portable format, but I absolutely loved playing through Generations. So there is definitely, if you don't want to buy a whole lot of games, there are definitely some games. I mean, between those three, that took up most of my past 2 years of gaming, was just those 3 games.
Yeah. No, yeah,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
true.
Some games have extremely long legs on them. Monster Hunter, oh god, that I could probably play just that game for a year and still be satisfied.
Hello, Nintendo!
Alright. Alec, do you want to talk us through Nintendo's E3 plans for this year?
Yeah, let's go for it. So Nintendo E3 this year is going to be really exciting. It seems like a smaller presentation. I shouldn't say smaller, more focused presentation. And what it's going to be is on Super Smash Bros. And Splatoon 2. So we're starting off with the Splatoon 2 World Championship. Opening rounds are on June 11th from 3:30 to 6 o'clock Pacific time. That's 6:30 to 9 o'clock Eastern time. And then the finals are going to be the next day on June 12th. They're then going to have a video presentation for new titles on the Nintendo Switch, including Super Smash Bros., starting at 9 a.m. on Pacific time on June 12th. That's noon Eastern time. Then we're going to go through the Nintendo Treehouse, and that's 3 days of unexpected announcements, insight into games, probably a lot of Smash Bros. Competition. I hope Bill and Reggie get up there and have a new duel. And then we're going to have the Super Smash Bros. Invitational, which starts right after the conclusion of Splatoon 2 on June 12th. So what my takeaway from this is, again, this is going to be focused a lot on Super Smash Bros. And the competitive scene. Not necessarily competitive in the terms of esports, but competition and how the Nintendo Switch is a multiplayer platform and how these are games that you can play together. So I think that the marketing this year is going to be really inclusive to people. It's going to be about bringing people together to play together. That's what I think that the theme of E3 is going to be.
Oh yes, I think so too, especially with their lineup here. Yeah, all of it they're doing 2 multiplayer game like the Invitational for Smash and the World Championship for Splatoon. Yeah, that definitely does seem like the name of the game this year.
Yeah, and it makes sense because that's kind of a unique experience that you can have with consoles like the Switch. Is within the competitive sphere specifically, even if it's not specifically at the esports level, it's still something that they emphasize with all these tournaments that they hold all the time. So, yeah, I think it's a major part of their marketing to they just keep holding events, and it's these multiplayer tournaments are a great excuse to hold an event. So it looks like they're not holding out at all for this E3 since we're even getting two events rather than just one in terms of the tournaments. So I think it'll be a very exciting E3, and you will have something to watch pretty much all week long if you have the time for it. So Nintendo always produces a lot of content for E3 in general.
Oh yeah, and interesting. After looking online a little bit, nobody's even talking about how Nintendo will be doing a video presentation again this year rather than a live show as they used to do up until a few years ago. I think it just comes to show just how packed Nintendo's presentation is this year. If or people might just come to expect it now that they're just going to have a video presentation, have it in a condensed format, give us a quick fire through of all of the upcoming games for the year and such.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I think there was a lot of hesitancy with their live presentations because of the potential for things to go wrong. And I mean, I do kind of miss the E3 blunders and stuff like that made live presentations so much fun. But their videos have been doing pretty well. I do hope though that they don't forever forget about sketches, because I've always enjoyed those when they do them. It's been a few years since we really got one, if I recall correctly, the puppet one with the person who made all the Muppets. One of the people who makes Muppets or Sesame Street puppets made the puppets for the Nintendo sketch for E3 2015. So
was that really the last one we got?
I think so. I can't remember.
So the last one that we got, and it was right before PAX West 26. What year is it's 2018, so it would have been PAX West 2016, and it was the announcement of the Galaxy 3DS. It's the one that we got the meme of Bill raising up, and he comes up out of the garbage can. He had the donuts. He always has donuts.
Oh yeah.
But that was the last sketch that we got, and then after that it kind of went they went mute before announcing the Nintendo Switch in November, and then that was a commercial, not a presentation, and then they went mute again until January when they did a more corporate presentation, if you will, and they've been doing that ever since January of 2017.
Yeah, okay, no, that makes more sense. So it's still been a year and a half at this point, but yeah, I mean, I do miss those. It seems like they've taken a different marketing direction, and no doubt in part because of Furukawa, who's seemingly at least a major figurehead for Switch marketing. I wonder if that played a role in it. They just wanted to take a completely different direction than what they had been doing before, but at the same time, whatever Nintendo can do to charm us, I always like the unique things they do. So I mean, really, these tournaments may be in a way what that will be for them this year, because tournaments. Most companies do tournaments in one form or another, but when Nintendo does them, I take particular notice, even though otherwise I don't generally care for tournaments. But for Nintendo, I actually am interested, so it'll be fun to watch these two this year, especially Smash Brothers. We haven't seen that for a while.
Yeah, no, I do think that this is part of the new marketing scheme. People, it's just natural. They want to reach out to more people like their information concise and not in elaborate sketches. I love the sketches and I want them back. They're cheesy,
True.
but they're so fun. But I do think that the tournaments are also a way of attracting more people. Just from being at E3 last year, nobody had any idea what ARMS was. People went to the Nintendo booth for Super Mario Odyssey. Mainly, the lines there historically long. But the ARMS tournament, despite being a game that hasn't sold exactly well, people loved. People were coming there just for this fun of it because it was Nintendo, and Nintendo had a real charm about the way that they were presenting it. And I think with Super Smash Bros. Being live on the floor there, especially now that the floor is open to the public, that is their way of including and attracting a lot more people. I think it's going to be a huge hit at E3 this year, even if it's not like the big thing.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I think you're right because, yeah, if you're walking around and you get to witness a live tournament, you can participate in that as an audience member, and so that is a really cool way to engage people beyond just showing them demos.
Yeah, and especially with a tournament, people are gonna just want to come and sit down for a few minutes and then just watch the tournament go on. And then after those few minutes, you have no real obligation, at least for the most part, to stay there the whole time. So it gets people's attentions for a few minutes or maybe longer. They walk away. They might come back and see even more action going on. But it's just, I really believe that these tournaments are really good economically, or like for like, people's times.
Yeah, absolutely. I certainly just swoop in and out sometimes of these tournaments. I don't really watch the whole thing necessarily, but yeah, you have that ability to just kind of check in and out, and it'll probably be interesting no matter when you check in. So that's pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
Hello, Nintendo!
Well, that about wraps it up. I'd like to thank Alec and Michael for joining me today.
Good to be here.
Hey, thank you very much for letting me be on.
Oh yeah, Alec, on social media, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at ACLHaynes.
And Michael, how about yourself?
Yeah, you could find me on Twitter as well as iWatafan _ or just on Reddit itself, which is where I often can be found.
Oh yeah, and especially with Reddit's new social features, you can probably easily find any of us on Reddit. So, and feel free to shoot us a message on there sometime. You know, I promise we won't bite, at least for the most part. I don't know, Alec is a lion, so you gotta be a little careful when dealing with him.
Factually correct.
Alright, and so next time, we'll ask the question echoed since the very dawn of time. Is Nintendo Nintendo-doomed? See you next time on Hello Nintendo.